We are going to start out with Guy Rocha, and I'm so excited that he is here. I'm very honored to meet him because he is a legend in Nevada. I'm a Colorado girl, and just driving him from the airport, I think I learned more in the car for 10 minutes than I have living here since 2007. So with that, Guy Rocha.
Okay, thank you everybody for showing up. Thank you. We're up against the time bind. We're starting about 20 minutes late, so I'm going to try to expedite. A little background on me. This is my hometown. I'm coming home. I'm a product of one of Nevada's legislated industries. My mother came to Las Vegas to get a divorce in 1955, and I grew up here and went to school here. Graduated from Clark High School and went on to get an undergraduate degree at Syracuse, went to San Diego State, and went to Western Nevada in 1975 to work on a doctorate in history at UNR. I'm vitally interested in this issue, and I started getting immersed in it 30 years ago in dealing with the eminent domain law, which gave mining companies, going back to 1875, the right to take private property, the right to condemn private property. And in 1981, we were only able to make a small dent in that line, in that law. But, and I think Stephen Horser will talk about this, that law has been repealed in the last session. Mining companies can no longer condemn private property. That is a big win for PLAN and all the other allies. I'm excited about that. Okay, let me get to what we need to deal with here. I'm going to talk about the mining taxation issue in our state constitution. We passed Senate Joint Resolution 15 in the 2011 session. It needs to pass the 2013 session in order to go before the voters in the next election, presumably the general election in November 2014. If it doesn't get out of the legislature, it doesn't get to the voters. And I'm going to talk about why it's critical that the voters essentially get to weigh in on this issue. This is my testimony before both the Senate Revenue Committee and also the Assembly Revenue Committee. Bear with me. I think when it's all done, even though I'm reading, I'll try to be animated as possible, you'll understand the privileged status that the mining industry has in the state over any and all other businesses, and the fact that the parameters for taxing mines on mineral extraction has been placed in our Constitution for almost 150 years, and the legislature cannot, as a matter of public policy and tax, address the issue. Their hands are tied, and it's time that the voters, 150 years later, by the time they get to vote on it, if it gets through the legislature in 2013, has the opportunity to say, we want our legislators to make that decision. We don't want the Constitution to give the mining corporation special privilege. So let me read out very quickly as I look at my time, because we've got a lot of us here. We got an 8:45 flight. Okay, essentially what I found is Alaska is the only other state among the 13 western hard rock mining states to have a net proceeds tax. However, Alaska's mining tax is in statute, while Nevada has the sole distinction of its mining tax found both in the Constitution and in statute. Okay? The issue of gross proceeds, the mining tax versus a net proceeds mining tax during the constitutional debates was very controversial and complex. Remember, only mining, of all the businesses, even gaming, even though their taxes are low, they still pay on gross proceeds. This was the case of in the constitutional delegates when they were confronting this. And there were two conventions. They used California's Constitution as their template, and California had gross proceeds. Okay, something would happen in July of 1864 that would change everything, and continues to dictate our public policy as regards mining taxation today for mineral extraction. My work, my principal template for work is a fellow who went to Pennsylvania, doctoral dissertation, David Allen Johnson, now at Portland State, and his work is critical in analyzing what the hell happened in terms of the corporations essentially carrying the day in July 1864. Briefly, the key to understanding what happened in Carson City during the Second Constitutional Convention in July 1864 is the fact that the Comstock Lode and Nevada was experiencing its first great economic depression. The Constitutional Convention, in a close vote, initially passed a gross proceeds mining tax. They opened on July 5th, 1864. However, according to Professor Johnson, opponents of the mining tax, mindful of the Depression and its lessons, declared that such a clause not only meant certain defeat for the Constitution, but more importantly, the destruction and ruin of the paramount industry of our territory. Mining has been dependent on this concept of paramount industry. That's how they got eminent domain, and that's how they got this exception. It is no longer the paramount industry in the state. It hasn't been for over 50 years. Casinos do. Casinos then should have net proceeds. Casinos should then have eminent domain. No, not that either. But mining has those privileges. Please remember the operative term paramount industry, because it has driven public policy and case law in Nevada to the present. No longer, quote, no longer, they insisted, could any Nevadan maintain, as farmers, merchants, and businessmen had, that their interests could be distinguished from the mining industry. The Depression had taught otherwise. Indiscriminate taxation would pose an insuperable burden upon miners, large and small. It would make investment even less appealing. It would drive away needed capital, and as the delegate E.F. Dunn bluntly put it that way. Without capital, our mines are valueless. We have not and never had the capital necessary to develop our mines, and we are therefore dependent upon foreign capital. And remember, most of our major mining companies are multinationals, Vancouver, Toronto, Canadian based. Charles DeLong, the interest of the mining industry, a leader of the anti-mining tax taxation, was not separate and distinct from the interests of the merchant, businessman, laborer, mechanic, or for that matter, the farmer. For it was the capital from outside Nevada, invested in these mines that had paid Nevada's laborers, patronized the territory's merchants, and created markets for ancillary enterprises. It has been paid to the farmer for the products he has taken to the city of Virginia to feed laboring men. It has been paid to the mill owner for crushing quartz. It has been paid to the teamster for hauling lumber. It has been paid for improving streets and creating buildings. It has been dispersed throughout the community. The mining corporations are the basis of the prosperity and the wealth of our cities. The argument proved effective. After an evening of discussion, the delegates reconsidered the mining tax clause. This time they voted it down when the mining county merchants and businessmen abandoned their old position. Now let me read one of the advocates of the tax and his read on what had just happened. Crucial in this regard was a simple point that supporters of the mining tax emphasized throughout the debate. If the Constitution exempted the mines from taxation or allowed the legislature to do so, the state would effectively be delivered to foreign capitalists. Quote, it is a principle in political economy, the appropriately named Andrew Jackson Lockwood argued early on, that capital is sensitive not to principles of patriotism, not to principles of state pride, but to the principles of loss and gain only. Does this sound familiar? The mine owners who were subject to any tax, he pointed out, were for the most part foreigners, aliens who had wished us no good. They send men to take gold out of here, or the bullion, and when it is taken out, it is sent to the city of London, and there is nothing left to show for it in this territory. What other country in the world allows a thing of this kind to be done in its public domain? Okay? The Depression had convincingly demonstrated that marketplace dependence upon its largest and most impressive, powerful corporate members, for those committed to marketplace competition as a natural order of things, this past led to but one destination: public sanction of the industrial corporation's interest as the interest of all. Mining companies come first, paramount industry. By the time of the September 7th statehood vote, the new Constitution had become a sure panacea for economic distress. Upwards of 90% of the electorate voted yea, and Nevada battle-born entered the Union. In conclusion, Professor Johnson wrote, with the Depression and the emergence of the Bank of California regime, the day of marketplace individualism came to a close. The Nevada Convention delegates, in their confrontation with crisis in thought and economy, had reconciled their interests of the little man with those of corporate capital. Postscript, I find it surprisingly ironic that in revisiting the issue of mining taxation in Nevada almost 150 years later, after the Constitution was adopted, the state is arguably experiencing the worst economic crisis in its history, and juxtaposed this time, the hard rock mining industry is enjoying record profits. Okay, I'll leave you with this. This is my message, and I hope you carry this message forward. Let Nevada voters decide. Let Nevada voters decide. After some 150 years of the state constitution setting the parameters of state taxation on mining, it is long overdue that the issue be revisited. Essentially, the legislature should again pass SJR 15 in 2013 and let Nevada voters decide on a ballot question if they want their legislators to establish the overarching tax policy on the mining industry as opposed to the state constitution. In order to give the legislators that power, the provision in the state constitution granting the mining industry the privileged status of a business only being taxed on net proceeds on mineral extraction would have to be repealed. It needs to be passed. But what you will see, the mining industry has already started its propaganda campaign. And they're going to be spending tremendous amounts of money to see that this resolution is not passed in 2013 and goes to the voters. Because I argue, if the voters vote on this, they will repeal that provision in the Constitution and leave it up to the legislators during regular session to do what they need to do. And they may choose not to raise mining taxes, but at least we can address it in the legislature and not see our legislators with their hands tied by a decision made 150 years ago. We're being held hostage to the past. Thank you.